you guys for being here. This is a really special seminar for me to be a part of. Obviously, as all of you are aware, our college proudly has the name of the Mike Curb College of Entertainment and Music Business. And I will say Mike was one of the few people from like record company presidents that I did not know before I came to Belmont. And so one of the greatest privileges that I have had over this last year and a half is really getting to know Mike, to know his wife Linda, who is here with us as well, and really get to understand and appreciate the depth of his experience and his generosity. And I am so thrilled that he is here with us today to share with you guys a little bit more about that. If you are not aware, Mike Curb is, his record company is celebrating 60 years this year of Curb Records. They have had every artist from Tim McGraw, Winona Judd, Leanne Rimes, Hank Williams Jr., The Judds, Lyle Lovett, Natalie Grant, Ray Stevens, Dylan Scott for King and Country, Hannah Ellis. Like, there's so many, I mean, more than I can even name. He has had an incredible career as a record producer. People may or may not know that he is also a race car advocate and owner. His driver and team actually won the Music City Grand Prix this last weekend, which is really exciting. You guys may not know that he was at one point Lieutenant Governor of the state of California and spent a brief time as acting governor of California. Just an incredible bit of experience. And so I think the place to start would be tell us about how you got into the music business as a kid. And I believe you started your first record company at the age of 18. And so just tell us about how you got into music and how you started what later became Curb Records.
Wow. Well, thank you. Is this on?
It's on.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Brittany. Brittany's doing a phenomenal job. And, you know, I didn't know her, but everybody at my company knew her. Brittany, as you know, was running Spotify. And Spotify is the future. And we really miss her at Spotify, but we're much more, she was our representative, but she did such a phenomenal job at Spotify. And she was also a very successful lawyer with the Loeb & Loeb firm here, which is one of the very top firms, particularly for music and entertainment. So it was very interesting to have someone coming in to our college to join the great people that were already here, like Sarita and Don Cusick, and so many. Well, I could go through the list of incredible people here and that were already here. But the way she's brought those people in and expanded their roles, and at the same time creating all kinds of new programs and new ideas. So we're real fortunate to have Brittany here as our dean, and very thankful for that.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
And in terms of the question you asked me, how did I get started? I was a college student just like everybody here. And I was 18. I was in California. I grew up in California. Cal State. Cal State has 22 campuses, but I was on the campus in the San Fernando Valley. It was actually called San Fernando Valley College at the time. It was almost a junior college, but they had new programs for third and fourth year at the time, and they later became known as Cal State Northridge, which is kind of ironic because we set up a college there, a Curb College for music, entertainment, and we have 6,600 students at that college now. It's so ironic because when I was there, they didn't have one music program. I couldn't even take any kind of music program, which is why I was so thankful that we could do this, because I didn't ever want people to be in the same position I was in, where there were no music programs of any kind, no music business programs. So it was not good, but we've changed it there. and we've really changed it here because this is the #1 music business college in the world. So back to the question, how did I get started? Well, there was a professor there who liked me and let me use the music room, and I had a band. I played guitar and piano. We had a 4-piece band: guitar, piano, bass, drums, and I would play it at parties. Our college did not have any fraternities, but I would play at UCLA with my band, and USC, Occidental, the other colleges did have fraternities. My father was an FBI agent, so I wasn't in a position to go to one of the private colleges, but I did go to Cal State Northridge, or San Fernando Valley State as it was called at the time, and I was allowed to use the music room, and I wrote several songs, none of them great, but one of them was called "You Meet the Nicest People on a Honda," which was interesting because I thought the professor kept telling me, this is a good song, but you got to get it out to be a commercial. So I used to walk up and down the streets of Hollywood Boulevard, where the Hollywood Star, where the Walk of Fame is, and there used to be like 100 little record companies, the independent record companies, and these record companies might have 1 or 2 artists, and they were very small, and I would constantly take songs that my band had performed to see if I could get someone to release the record, which is always a nightmare. And then we found, one day I worked my way into the Capitol building, and I got into the elevator, not knowing where I was going to go. And Bobby Darin, who was a famous singer at the time, he had songs like Mac the Knife, you might even still hear them in movies, Mac the Knife, Dream Lover, Splish Splash. He had a lot of very big hits, but he was just starting his own publishing company, and he asked, I knew a lot about music history. I loved the little 45 RPM records. I still have them. I really loved music history, which is so important now in record companies because everybody knows who Taylor Swift is, but a lot of people don't know who Don Gibson is, or they don't know who Floyd Kramer was. And today, because of Spotify and social, and the DSPs now, because of that, catalog is huge. And at our company, we probably do 75% of our business with our catalog. And that's been opened up by Spotify. Before Spotify and before Apple Music and Amazon and the DSPs, before that, we didn't have, as you probably know, putting a catalog record out was almost impossible. You had to get it to Walmart or Tower Records. You would be lucky if they would take one of our albums by Tim McGraw, or if they'd put one album by Frank Sinatra. Now, with Spotify, every Frank Sinatra album is up. Every Tim McGraw album is up. Even artists who sold just a handful of records have their albums up, and over time they sell. So now, like, our company probably has close to 3,000 albums up, whereas prior to the DSPs, that was not the case. Anyway, you meet the nicest people on a Honda. So Bobby Darin, I told him how much I respected his music, and he said, well, what are you doing? I said, I have a band and I'm writing songs and I have a Honda song. He said, well, I've just started a publishing company. He was a recording artist, but he had started a publishing company, and he had an office at Capitol. He invited me into his office, and I played that song, and he said, well, why don't you take it to the Gray agency that represents Honda? Anyway, I did, and they chose it to be the Honda commercial, and they paid me $3,000, and I thought I was rich. So I rented a small office, got started. However, things didn't go too well, and I ended up having to keep my office, but I had to give up my apartment, and I ended up living in the janitor's room in the building where I had my office so I could maintain my office. And not only that, I was living with my sister, who was a student at UCLA at the time. So she was the overachiever in our family, definitely. But in any event, that's how I got started. And then when that commercial hit, we formed a group called the Hondells, and they had a top 10 record. And then my group, my instrumental group, ended up having three or four chart hits. They weren't real big, but they were Billboard chart hits. One of them was called Apache, but one of them did very well. It was called Blues Theme. It was from a movie, and then I started doing songs for movies. They had lots in Hollywood, lots of smaller movies, biker movies, surfing music. They weren't classics or anything, but I ended up where I would give the music virtually free that I would write, and then in exchange for that, we would get the soundtrack album. And then
tell us more about that, because that's a huge part of your story, is getting these soundtrack albums.
Well, if I wanted to inspire any of you to start a record company or to be in the business, I mean, you can be an entrepreneur and not own the company. You can start the finance department. You can start the legal department. The art department. I mean, there are so many. You don't have to be a musician to be in the record business. You can do all the different. Well, look at all the things you can learn here. But it's always good to find a niche, because you don't want to just be a one-hit wonder, And so, my niche, I knew that I wasn't a really great songwriter, and I knew that I wasn't a really great record producer. I wasn't really great at anything, but I loved the business, and I knew that I could function in it in different ways. And I found that I could write music for movies, and there were hundreds of movies. I guess you'd call them B movies. They were, as I say, surfer movies, anybody who had a movie, whatever it was about, I would write a song for it, or I would co-write with friends of mine. And we ended up, over that period of time, over that 5-year period where we started the company, doing music for over 50 films. And the whole hook was we would write the songs, give the songs very inexpensively, but keep the right to put out the soundtrack. And then I was very blessed to meet an African-American gentleman named Eddie Ray, who was working at Capitol, who was willing to give me a distribution. I didn't want to go to work there, but I wanted distribution for my little record label, and he somehow believed in me. Again, I knew his history. I can't emphasize enough, the more you can study the history of the business, the better, because when you meet people from the business, if you know about them, it's a sign of respect, and they will, you tell someone that you love their music, or you remember their hits, whether it's an artist or whether it's an executive, whoever it is, you tell that to someone, you'll get their attention. And when you get inside a company, if you know the history of the business, if you know the names of the artists, then you'll be able to relate to the catalog, which is now 75 to 80% of what most companies are selling. So it's a fantastic, but finding a niche, the niche can be anything. But my niche was writing music for soundtracks. And then ultimately, as time went on, we got to do better pictures. Like we got the Clint Eastwood movie. I wrote the theme for the Clint Eastwood movie, Kelly's Heroes, which was called Burning Bridges. And then I had my music group, the Mike Curb Congregation, and they sang it. And then they started having some hit records. So, I mean, I had a nice period as a songwriter. I won some BMI awards, and had a nice period as a recording artist with my band, the Arrows, and the Mike Curb Congregation, and the Hondells, and all that. So for the first 10 years, but after that, I realized that everybody, all the people who were younger, were better than me, and that they understood production better than I did at that time. I had success. I was the Billboard Producer of the Year. The only problem is that was 1972, and that doesn't make me relevant today, but it does mean that I can relate to other young producers and other young songwriters and young people from the industry who want to be in the art department, who want to be in music business finance, or who just want to be who want to be in marketing, who want to be in sales. I just want to encourage you that you don't have to be a musician. You don't have to be great. I was never great at anything. You don't have to be great at anything. You just have to have a passion for something. And if you have a passion for any aspect of the business, all of which you can learn here. This is the #1 music business college in the world, and you can learn anything here. And you can ask me questions or whatever, but I don't know how much more.
So tell me this. And you've already hit on a number
Yeah.
of the things that I considered asking you about,
Yeah.
including your time as a songwriter and a producer, even advice to students. But one of the things that I've had the privilege of hearing is some of your great stories and just incredible artists that you have worked with and opportunities that you've had to be a part of. Is there any particular artist story that really sticks out in your mind, or time that you were in the studio with someone that stands out to you, or even a business moment? Give us a couple of the highlights.
Well, what's exciting, it used to be if an artist was unhappy, they'd call you on the phone. Now, if they're unhappy, you read about it in social media. Or if someone doesn't like their album cover, they'll say, cover isn't the right cover, and I worked so hard on the album. So now you sort of read about your history as it unfolds. But what I would, right now everybody's happy so far at this, but what I would say, if I was going to make a point, if you believe in a song, whether you're a songwriter, whether you're in the business, whether you are just a friend, or whether you want to be in the business as an entrepreneur or as an employee or an executive, whatever, I would say passion for music is important. And I would say that, I would give you one example. Back during the time that I was Billboard Producer of the Year back in '72, I had an experience where I signed an artist named Sammy Davis Jr. Now, you may not have heard of him, but many people consider he's the greatest entertainer of all time. He was African American, and he was so unique, but he worked with Frank Sinatra. He was just a genius level guy, but he needed a hit record, and we had a song called Candyman, and I did not write Candyman, but the funny thing about the song, it was written by Leslie Bricusse and Anthony Newley. It was in the picture Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Now, recently they brought back Willy Wonka, but the main song in the movie was a song called Candyman. And after I had a big hit from the Clint Eastwood movie, the producers of Willy Wonka came to me and said, "We want your group, the Mike Curb Congregation, to go in and record the Candyman." And I thought, well, that's great. I'll go do that and we'll have a hit. Well, I put it out and it was not a hit. And my mother never wanted me to tell the story. She said, "Why do you tell it? I don't want anyone to know that you didn't have a hit." Well, I believed in the song and it wasn't a hit. But even though it wasn't a hit, I still believed in the song. And that's where I would encourage everybody here, that if you believe in a song, or you believe in something, or you believe in someone, don't give that up. So when Sammy signed, he wanted to do R&B and Shaft and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't have that ready. And so I said, "Sammy, would you be willing to just sing the Candyman?" And he said, "Well, you already put it out and it didn't hit." I said, "Yes, but it is a really good song, and it's from the picture Willy Wonka, and it would give us something we could work with in the meantime." So finally, he agreed to do it, but he wouldn't sing the whole song. And I had already recorded with my group, so I don't know if you remember the song, but it went, the chorus went, "The Candyman makes everything he bakes satisfying," and he wouldn't sing that, And so I had my group sing it, and so he would sing, the first part of it. When it got to the chorus, he wouldn't sing it. So I dialed my group in, so it became a duet. So we released it as Sammy Davis Jr. and the Mike Curb Congregation, and guess what? It went all the way to #1. And so I would tell the story. My mother would say, "Don't tell that story, because you say your group was on it, the Mike Curb Congregation, and it didn't hit, and you add Sammy Davis to it, and it goes all the way to #1. But it's good to tell the story, because it tells the story of, if you believe in a song, don't give up. What's the old saying? If at first you don't succeed, keep trying. I mean, if you believe in someone, if you believe in something, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's an entertainer, an artist, a friend, you believe in your friend's talent, you believe in your own talent, don't give up if the first record doesn't hit. Don't give up if you have to record. We actually recorded that song 3 times before we got the hit. So that's my story. You know, I'm sticking to it.
Tell us about, you also have a story about the song You Light Up My Life. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, You Light Up My Life was the #1 record of the entire decade of the 70s. And I have 25% of the copyright, but I don't really consider myself the co-writer. It was Joe Brooks actually wrote the song. My biggest contribution to the song is it was the early days of the Christian music business. As you probably know, our company is obviously very involved in pop and country, but we're also very involved in contemporary Christian music. And this is, in the early days of contemporary Christian music, there were only 7 stations back in the mid-70s. And we had an artist named Debbie Boone. She was the daughter of Pat Boone, who grew up here in Tennessee. He was a famous artist, but Debbie had never had a hit. And this song came along, and they asked me to play it for the various people like the Carpenters, Anne Murray, and so forth. They wouldn't record it, but a friend of mine had paid for the movie, and he was really in trouble. And there was this one song, and my biggest contribution to the song was the song was "You Light Up My Life," but it sounded like a waltz. You light up my. It just sounded like papa like a waltz. So I suggested that we do it in 4, but more importantly, I asked him to let's get rid of the word baby, and because if we're going to go to the Christian market, we can't. It's a great world, isn't it? If you use the word baby, it's hard to take it to the Christian radio stations, but it's hard to but you need baby in there if you're going to go country, right? So, or pop, but in any event, I convinced him to take the word baby out, and it actually made it a better song because the punchline was in "You light up my life, you give me hope to carry on," and we put the record out and shipped it to Christian radio, but there were only 7 stations, and it started to get some traction. And then in KBBQ in Houston, which was a top 40 station, started playing it, and the record exploded and became the #1 pop record. So we had released it as a Christian record, and it became the #1 pop record. But what did that teach me? Well, now today, where we have For King and Country, and I'm sure all of you have heard For King and Country. They're probably the #1 act in Christian music, but I think they're the #1 rock band. I mean, if you see their concerts, I mean, it's unbelievable. They're selling out arenas, but we learned something very quickly when we signed For King and Country, and that is that we could go to Christian, but we could also go to pop radio. And now they're having hits in all genres. And we learned that from the record that you just mentioned, "You Light Up My Life" by Debbie Boone, where it started as a Christian record and became the #1 pop record of that decade.
I've got one more question for you, and then we're going to open it up to
Yeah.
questions, and then we're going to save just a couple minutes at the end for a little sneak peek about something. One of the things that I've told you this, that I think part of your greatest legacy will be your philanthropy, as much success as you have had in the business. And you are an incredible philanthropist. You've also made, as you've shared, like an incredible investment in higher education programs, music business, entertainment programs, but particularly at Belmont. And I would love for you to share a little bit about where your heart for philanthropy comes from and why higher education and why Belmont.
Wow, that's a long question.
Sorry. It's a lot of questions pushed into one.
Nice question, though. Thank you. My grandmother was Hispanic, and she, I think, went through suffering a little bit of discrimination in her time. She had no money, and there was a pandemic 100 years, you know how horrible our pandemic was just a few years ago. Well, 100 years before that, there was a huge pandemic. They called it the Spanish flu. And my grandmother was very young at the time, probably about your age, and she was Hispanic. She lost 3 sisters in the pandemic and lost her father, and she had no money. So she put herself through college in Texas at San Marcos. I believe it was San Marcos Baptist College. It was, right now it's called San Marcos College, but in her day it was called San Marcos Baptist. She put herself, she had to take a train for hours every day, and she put herself through college, became the first person in our family to graduate. She then, but she was, she had no money, and she had, suffered all kinds of family losses. But she was always saying to me, think about the people who are underserved. What good does it do to have, she never cared what number my records were on Billboard. She would see my music group, the My Curb Congregation, she'd see us because we were regulars on the Glenn Campbell TV show at the time. She would see that, but she was proud of that, but she didn't care about it. She would always say, what are you doing for the underserved, the people who are struggling, the people who are homeless, the people who are unhoused, the people who don't have enough food? And so she would always say that. So when my company started to succeed, which took a while, because this is our 60th anniversary this year. So we started this 60 years ago when I was a teenager. So basically, I always promised her that if we would succeed, we would put money back. And so what our model is, we try to take 50% of what we earn and put it into charitable causes, homeless shelters. My wife and I sponsor the big homeless shelter at downtown, the Rescue Mission, and the new women's shelter. It's over 250,000 square feet of homeless shelter, plus the veteran shelter, which is right around the corner. But we've been doing all kinds of work with the underserved. We have in my grandmother's name, her name was Eloisa Salazar, we have the Refugee Center here in Nashville, named after my grandmother. And we've been doing all kinds of, and of course education, which is so key. So we put 50%, approximately 50% each year into charitable causes, and then including our foundation, and the other 50% we try to grow our company. And for some reason, God has given us the pathway. Success is when opportunity meets preparation. And so we can't control success, that only comes from God. But preparation we can control and be prepared. And then we could try to have a model that works. And so over the years, of course now, over so many years now, we've put so much into our foundation. The state treasurer of Tennessee told me recently that our foundation gives to more charities in the state of Tennessee than any foundation in history. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but his name is David Lillard. He's the state treasurer. He told me that, so I'm putting this on tape here. And he's still alive. When people are still alive, you have to really tell the truth. But to me, it just gives us hope. We all know as Christians, we know about tithing, but at the same time, we know that giving back to the community. When I think about this, it was so funny. I had lunch with Bill Trout the other day, who was the president of the college when I got involved, and it was April 20. We all know the great history of what Bob Malloy did, going all the way back to 1974, and how he was like a one-man band. I mean, I remember the first time I saw Bob, it was Bob Malloy, and he had an assistant, and there was one other person in the office, and he was starting this with nothing, and it just impressed me how he maintained it for so many years, just operating out of, first it was the Massey building and then over near the library. I was so impressed with that, and I knew him. But then Bill Trout, when he was president, on April 23rd, 1994, said to me, asked me, Donnie Hilly had set up a lunch. He said, if you would contribute 500,000, we could start a music program. And I said, well, how would that work? He said, well, we have a music school, we have a business school, but this would be somewhere in between. It would be a separate program. So I said yes. And the only thing I asked at the time is whether or not he was going to do something in history. And he told me about a guy named Don Cusick in 1994 that was just joining. And I think Don is here today.
He is.
And he said, Don Cusick is going to come here and do music history. Of course, we now know he holds the Curb Chair in history, but we knew that and of course I knew of Don's reputation, and I knew that he would be good for students because he could fill that in. And I think Wes Bolla was going to do the audio engineering at the time, and of course we had Bob Malloy doing the general music business, and that was the program. And it operated for about 5 years, and then he said, you know, we might be able to, this is catching on, we might be able to expand this. They opened up down at the bottom of Massey, a couple of recording studios with donations from alums and from students, microphones, guitars. It started building, and so he said, if you do another 500, we could turn this into a school. And then along came Bob Fisher, my goodness, Bob the Builder. And he was, Bob, I mean, I loved working with Bill Trout because Bill was so into building the programs. And then Bob Fisher came along and he said, Mike, this could be a college. This could be an entire college. And I said, well, one thing, can we get film in there? Can we get soundtracks? Because that's how I started, and I'd love for the students to at least be able to, if we don't know the video part of it, it's pretty hard now. I mean, whether it's film, whether it's social media, whether it's videos, whatever, music and video have just come right together. So Bob said, why don't we make it a Curb College for entertainment and music business? And so I said yes, and then I won't even tell you how much he asked for, but it was more than I had ever dreamed of contributing. And as you can probably see, over the years since, and over the 30 years since we started in 1994, now it's 30 years, but it's 50 years since Bob Malloy had the dream. And I always think that's the most important thing. Bob had the dream. Could you imagine how thrilled he'd be to see how Bob would be to meet Brittany? And I wish maybe in the next life he will get that chance, but to see how this college is functioning. He dreamed, and then we came in and tried to add some fulfillment to it. And I guess you all know that this has been a real passion for me. And I hate to even talk about what our foundation has contributed, but I'm proud of it. I'm proud of every dollar we've contributed. Someone told me, I think Dave Roselli, and by the way, Greg Jones, do you ever have a great president now? Greg Jones, when he first joined, I said, oh my goodness, he's a preacher. Which direction is the college going to go? Because, I'm a big believer in human rights and non-discrimination and all that. And some preachers go one direction and some preachers go a different direction. And well, we got the right preacher. The vision that Greg Jones has for this university and how he's fought discrimination every time there was a group that was against gays that had rented space here, and he heard about it and he canceled it. He said, we don't want any discrimination against gay people. He said, we don't want any discrimination against Jewish people. He's opened up so Jewish professors can be here. He is, and of course, being the grandson of a Hispanic woman who didn't have money, but she was the inspiration for our foundation. I don't want any discrimination. I don't want to see any student discriminated against because of their lifestyle, because of their sexuality, because of their religion, because for any reason. No one should be discriminated against. And so that's been one of the passions of our foundation. And Greg Jones has just opened this. It's just unbelievable the things that he's doing and the people he's bringing in, like Brittany. Your provost is just sensational, and the and the new people that he's bringing in at every level, and he's kept the really good people, Sarah Cates and Sarita, and the really good people have all stayed, and like Don. And so I tell you something, I am so excited about the opportunity you all have, and I really, there would be no college without all of you. And so I have to thank all of you for wanting to do this, and I hope you all have great careers, whether it's in the music industry or even if you aren't in the industry. I hope that this turns out to be just a fabulous experience for everybody.
Well, that seems like a great pivot. I was going to save this to the very end, but I think we should do it now before we take questions, which is a little sneak peek at Mike's latest contribution to the college. You all may have heard of last year that we are renovating an additional 17,000 square feet down on Music Row. That will triple the number of songwriting, co-writing spaces we have, add a live sound classroom, add songwriting classrooms, and then we will also be building a new building on Music Row. And we thought this would be a good opportunity to share with all of you the interior of what the renovated space is going to look like, because it is going to open up for next fall. Any of you who've spent time down on Music Row have probably seen the construction site and the fences and all the stuff that's underway. So this will be the facade. We'll have the entire building now that you see. Wow. This will be kind of the cleaned up front. I
have to have eyes in the back of my head.
That's right. This will be the entrance of the new space. This will lead us into a student hang space that we'll also be able to use as a live performance area. That'll be already.
Is this the Lee building?
This is Buddy Lee.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
This is Buddy Lee. So this will give everyone. It'll be lit and already wired for sound for performances. We've kind of dubbed this our Bluebird Cafe style space.
This is right next door to
34.
The studios. You know, one of our passions for history has been to buy these studios like RCA Studio B and Columbia Studio A and the Quonset Hut. We bought these studios and then we've contributed them to our foundation, and now we're using them, as you know, for classrooms. But this is right next to the Quonset Hut and Columbia Studio A, and this building that we acquired 10 years, we've been trying for 10 years, and it took Brittany to get this thing started, and now we're you know, last year we had to turn like 100 students away just in songwriting, and now we'll have this right next door. So this will be on Music Row, and this is in addition to the other building, right?
That's right. So then, and this will be the listening room. We'll have a large listening room that'll be able to hold about 25 people for listening and performances in that space. So we just wanted to take this opportunity to share this with you guys while Mike was here, because he's the one who has made all of this possible. And then, as many of you have probably seen, this will be the new building that we are working on, literally as we speak, working on design and what is exactly going to go in this space, and we're excited to share with you guys.
And this one is right around the corner.
Correct.
You know, this is right behind where the Columbia Sony building, the Columbia Studio A. This is the last empty lot. You know,
that's right.
We bought this years ago, and I kept wondering, will we ever do something great here? And we are. Again, thanks to your vision.
You.
Well, your vision. No, this is how this is something. Female power. We definitely won't be discriminating against women. Who will?
With that, we're going to open it up to questions. Who has a question?
I'd like to ask about your experience just in the entertainment industry as a whole, not just in the music industry. Obviously, you have a great resume in, for example, the racing world now. So I want to hear about how different sections of the entertainment industry compare and contrast from your time working in them.
Well, I don't know if Sarah Cates is here, but if she is she here? Well, Sarah Cates, years ago, when we were building out the college, she along with Bob Fisher, she said, we need a curb event center because we need sports. We need sports as entertainment. And she called me, I want to say about 6 months ago, and said that Brittany had agreed to bring sports, or at least sports administration, into the Curb College. Well, I'm a big believer in that, because everybody likes sports in some way or another. Whether you're a Titans fan, whether you're a basketball fan, whether you're a Predators fan, auto racing. My passion has been for racing, but auto racing also is good for music. I mean, you go to the infield of Indianapolis or Daytona, go to the infield there at Daytona, and it looks like Broadway on a Friday night or Saturday night. There's a tremendous promotion between Christian music, country music particularly, and motorsports. But we over the years have built up our sports team. We're in IndyCar racing, which is Indianapolis 500. We're in World of Outlaws, sprint cars, USAC, NASCAR. We're involved in that. We've been in for years, and so I think sports is a huge part of this. And so I think your question is, how did all that happen? I think just over the years, we've built our sports company and built our music company just like our college. Look at this I remember 30 years ago when our college would have been 10 people or in a classroom, or maybe lucky enough to have 20 people in a room, and look what we have here, and this is just part of it. So we built I guess your question is, how do you build? I think piece by piece. When you do it for 60 years, and I think my wife's been with me for over 50 years of that journey, so I think she could tell you that people think I'm 24/7, but I actually do enjoy life. But I am, like, we're open all the time. I mean, for example, during the pandemic, our foundation fed 95% of the homeless in Nashville because people had my cell phone. They could call me. A lot of the big foundations were closed because they had to be closed because of the pandemic, like Amazon and so forth. But our foundation was open. I think being open for business and being open to all new ideas and waking up each day and saying, what can we do to build our college? What can we do to build our sports team? What can we do to build our foundation? What can we do to build our music company? I think you just do that every day. That's what Brittany's doing here. Thinking wherever she is. She was even. How was your vacation, by the way?
It was great. I did enjoy it.
I want to have one of those. So, but it was exciting this weekend. Our car did win the IndyCar race out at the Speedway, at the Nashville Speedway. So that was. Thank you for mentioning that, by the way.
So, how is music similar to or different than film and TV? How is music similar to or maybe different than the sports industry?
The secret of it is they are very different. The people in film are very different from the people in music. The film companies are very different from the music companies in every aspect. But your key, what helped me, was learning how to merge the two. How do you find, because the music that you might like or I might like may not be the same thing the film producer likes. So you have to go inside the head of that music producer, a film producer, and say, what kind of music do you want? I mean, do you want, like I remember when I was doing the first big hit we had, Sounder, was called The Wild Angels. It starred Peter Fonda and Nancy Sinatra. It was kind of like a Hell's Angels movie. It was not something my parents particularly liked, but it was done by Roger Corman, and I remember he said to me, in fact, there's a video on YouTube where he said he talked about it. He said, I told Mike Curb 50 years ago that there were two directions you could go in the 60s, and that was either the Beatles or the Rolling Stones. And he said, I told Mike Curb I wanted the Rolling Stones. So we had our electric guitarist in the band just do a song that we called Blues Theme that just had the electric guitar, fuzz tone guitar, slamming, the amp turned up to where it offended everybody, but it's what the producer wanted. And ironically, the record became a top 40. It was actually my first top 40 hit as a songwriter and producer. It was with my band. It was called Blues Theme, and it was we gave the producer what he wanted, which was, so the key thing is to merge. The answer to your question is film and music are very different, but find the way to give the film producer what he wants. They have big egos. Find a way to give him what he wants or she wants, even if it's something that you don't like. Find, and if they don't like it, keep coming back to them until you have exactly what they want. And then, if the film hits, you can put it out as a soundtrack album, but hold on to those soundtrack rights. Don't give up rights that you don't need. You might have to give up the publishing to get your song in a movie, but you might not have to. Check that out. If you don't have to give it up, hold on to it, or maybe you keep half of it, or you keep 25% of it. But but make sure though that you realize that merging to really succeed in the entertainment industry, you have to understand the video and the music and how they merge, whether it's film, whether it's TV, whether it's music commercials, if you can understand that and figure that out, and then if you're willing to just hang in there until you meet the right film, it could be someone here. There could be someone here there is someone here who's going to produce a movie. There is someone here who's writing a script or is thinking of writing a script. Figure out who that person is and tell them you want to do the music. And then don't give them all your rights. Get Brittany to represent you.
Mike, thank you so much.
Yeah.
This has been such a privilege for all of us here. Thank you for being such a blessing to Belmont and to our college. And we appreciate you being here. Thank you again. We appreciate it.
Thank you. And let me just say this in closing. Thank you for coming today. And please believe in yourselves. And please stay positive, even if things don't happen quickly. Please succeed. But please enjoy your life, whether you're in the business or whether you do something else. You will always enjoy having learned the music business. It's a great business, and the entertainment business. So thank you for believing in this college, and thank you for being here today. I really appreciate it.